Hi, and welcome to another installment of Math Basics with Mr. Besh. Today we're going to talk about equivalent percents, decimals, and fractions, which I believe everybody should know to 7th and 8th grade level. As much so as, say, a younger brother or sister knows that 1 and 1 makes 2 in the primary grades, or, 2 times 3 makes 6. Of these basics, I'm just going to go and compile a list of what you should have in your tool belt here. The first one would be 0. Obviously 0% as a decimal, 0.0. And last but not least, in lowest terms as a fraction. I know we could write 0 as a fraction a number of different ways, but I just simplified it as being 0 over 1. The next fraction is 1 over 1. Many of you know already that it's 100%, and as a decimal it is 1.0. Continuing with this theme, we're going to do 200%. As a decimal, it's 2.0, and fraction being 2 over 1. If we keep climbing up there, 500% would be 5.0, and as a fraction, this would be 5 over 1. If you want to do the 300%, it's 3.0, 900% is 9.0, and so on and so on. The pattern does, in fact, continue with all of these fractions, decimals, and percents. Then some of our basics that we know from our dollar system. Your quarter, this is 0.25. It's 25%, and as a fraction in lowest terms, it's 1/4. A half, this is 0.5 as a decimal and or 50%. One thing I want to make a note of, sometimes you can write this 0.5 and or 0.50. I need you to understand that they represent exactly the same value. And that would be the same as if we did 0.2. It would be the same as 0.20 or 0.4, which is the same as 0.40. Adding the extra 0 after the last significant value in a decimal doesn't change the value at all. And a lot of times students will tend to make that mistake. So keep this as a note, please. Here we go, 3/4. This is 75%. 0.75 as a decimal, and 3 over 4 as a fraction. You got 1%. This one is very, commonly missed. A lot of students confuse this with 10%, so pay very close attention. 1% is 0.01, and as a fraction, it's 1 over 100. Like we did in a previous unit, anytime you have a fraction over 100, whatever is on the top is what its percent is going to be. 5%, notice now, 0.05 as a decimal, and as a fraction, it's 1 over 20. Now, a lot of people say, well, wait a second, what about 5 over 100? Well, yeah, 5 over 100 reduces down into lowest terms. You divide the top and the bottom both by 5. Remember, in my basics, all of my fractions are going to be in lowest terms. 15% works the same way, 0.15, and as a fraction, this guy is 3 over 20. Now, we start getting into the tens of percents. 10% is 0.1. Notice you're not confusing this with 1%, which is 0.01. And as a fraction, it is just 1 over 10. 30%, which is 0.3. And as a fraction, this guy is 3 over 10. Notice I skipped 50%. We already did that one. This one is 70%, 0.7. And as a fraction, it's 7 over 10. And last but not least, 90%. This is 0.9 or 9 over 10. Then we deal with the 20%. 0.2 is going to be 1/5. A lot of people say, well, wait a second, what about 2 over 10? Well, yeah, 2 over 10 is 1 over 5, but it's not in lowest terms. 1 over 5 is, and this is how we want to represent our basics. 40%, notice how these build, which is 0.4, and then this is 2 over 5. Notice again, 40% is double 20%, and 20% was 0.2, and this is now double that. And notice my fractions, where 20% was 1 over 5, and 40% now is 2 over 5. Check out the pattern here with 60%. Notice it's 3 over 5, and as the decimal, it's 0.6. Remember also what I said earlier, 0.6 is the same thing as saying 0.60. And the last one in this little family here, 80%, is going to be 4 over 5 as a fraction and 0.8 as my decimal. Then there's the two oddballs, and this is where we're going to end today's session. Rule of thumb, if it has a bar over top of the term in the decimal, it will have a bar over top of the term in the percent. This is 1/3, 1 over 3. As a percent, it's 33.3 repeated percent, and as a decimal, it is 0.3 repeated percent. Notice the bar goes directly above the term that starts the repeating. You see this a lot of times. Students want to put the bar wherever they want. They add a couple extra 3s here and there. You don't need to. As soon as it starts to repeat, you put the bar over top of your value. And last but not least, this here is a building block from 1/3. This is 2/3. Notice now it's not 0.3 with a bar, it's 0.6 with a bar. And last but not least, it's 66.6 with a bar percent. The way I describe this to students of how this normally works, this is kind of like studying a foreign language. When you study a foreign language, when you learn your alphabet the first time, or you're learning colors, or you're learning how to count, this skill is just basically repetition. The easiest way to remember these is to make flashcards and keep reviewing them over and over again. Because now, like I said, in the 7th and 8th grade level, you want to know these like you know your ABCs now. And that's it, folks. I hope you found this both helpful and informative.